It's the weekly show with David J. Maloney. This week, David talks to jazz and pop vocalist Curtis Stigers. And now, here's your host, David J. Maloney.
Welcome to everyone at home, and I would normally say our studio audience to the weekly show. I'm your host, David J. Maloney. I say normally because we'd usually shoot the show before a small studio audience at the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino, but we are still shooting from home due to renewed coronavirus concerns. We do hope to gain clearance to get back to our live-to-tape shows real soon. So, more and more cities are banning sledding for fear of lawsuits. As an expert in the legal field, I can tell you this sounds like a slippery slope. And according to a new study, orangutan grunts may hold secrets about human speech and could be the key to understanding Sylvester Stallone. And in Trump news, newly disclosed sections of Mueller's Russia report indicate Mueller believes the former president may have lied. Specifically, Mueller cites as an example everything Trump has ever said. Oh, and did you hear about this? Facebook is hitting the brakes on Instagram for kids. Yep. More bad news for Prince Andrew. Lastly, a four-time NBA champion who is the star of the TV show Shack Life recently rejected his celebrity status, explaining that celebrities are crazy and that he doesn't want to be associated with them. So, out of respect, I did not name him in this joke to protect his identity. On tonight's show, we've got a special singer-songwriter who has journeyed from pop to jazz and to many things in between, and has found success at every stage. Best known for his best-selling smash hit, I Wonder Why, he went on to become one of the best-known jazz artists in Europe, with a career spanning continents. Here to talk about the story of his career is Curtis Stigers, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Our featured guest tonight is an award-winning singer-songwriter who's possibly one of the last great genre-bending artists of his generation. He's a man comfortable with who he is as an artist and has always found an excited audience for his work. His smash hit, I Wonder Why, went multi-platinum off his self-titled debut album. His song, What's So Funny About Peace, Love, and Understanding, found massive success off the film The Bodyguard, and he has played or written songs with some of the greatest musicians of all time. Here to chat about his incredible music journey and his new album, please give a warm weekly show welcome to Curtis Stigers. Curtis, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
So, as I recall, you're originally from Boise, Idaho. What was life like for you there growing up?
Wow. Boise, Idaho was very quiet when I was growing up, and I'm back here now. I grew up in Boise, moved to New York when I was 21, and then moved back 16 years later with a child to raise. It's a good place to grow up. You can ski, you can sort of run free. It's a little bigger city than it was then, actually about 2.5 times the size now, but it was a good place for a young musician because there was a great music program in the schools. So I learned a lot about music. I grew up playing in all the bands and choirs, and I could also, because it was a small town, I could manage to play underage in bars. At the time when I was growing up, the drinking age was still 19, so you could kind of get away with being a 16-year-old playing drums in a punk rock band in a bar, as long as you just kept your head down. But it's a nice place. It's all right. I eventually had to get out. I sort of reached the ceiling when I was about 20 years old. I was playing in the most successful band, and I knew I had to leave. And eventually I found and fell in love with New York City, and I moved there.
So what would you say is probably your earliest music memory?
Well, I mean, as far as being a fan, I used to ride around in the car. I said I grew up in Boise, but I was born in Southern California. And so I would drive around with my mom everywhere. And I mean, that's what you did in the late 60s and early 70s in California. You drove. And so I remember sitting in my mom's VW Bug listening to the radio. And radio then pop stations, they played everything. They played Gladys Knight and the Pips and Stevie Wonder, and they played Neil Young and Joni Mitchell, and they played Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin. I learned about music from the radio, and I learned how to sing sitting in the car. I learned how to harmonize from my mom. She says I learned how to harmonize before I could walk. I think she is, pushing that a little bit, but that's how I became a fan of music, was just listening to the radio.
Well, if they're listening to things like Crosby, Stills, and Nash, you're gonna definitely, and things like, and if you're in California, the Beach Boys and things like that, you're gonna learn, you're gonna hear harmonies.
I got a good education just from that little VW Bug.
So do you think that some of those early music memories had any specific effect on your career choice or the kind of music you came to ultimately love?
Well, the thing about my career is that it's been all over the place, stylistically speaking. So yeah, it did have a lot to do with it. The way radio was programmed back then, AM pop radio, they played everything. So I fell in love with rock and roll, but I also fell in love with folk music, and I fell in love with soul music, and occasionally you'd even hear a little bit of jazz. A big influence, though, was just the fact that when I started playing music in school, I played clarinet and then eventually saxophone. And when you're a young musician who plays those kind of instruments, you want to find that music on records. So I went in search of jazz music, or of any music that had saxophone in it, and jazz was really a big part of that. So throughout my life, my career, I've played a lot of different kinds of music, but jazz has been a real through line through all of it.
Now, I think I've read somewhere that you've said that you're not really a jazz saxophone player per se, but a rhythm and blues sax player. What would you say the difference is to, say, someone who doesn't know the difference?
Well, there are, when there are a lot of different chords coming at me, I put the saxophone down and I sing. But this illustrates it. When I was a kid playing saxophone, I wanted to sound like Jimmy Page playing the guitar in Led Zeppelin. I wanted to sound like B.B. King playing the blues guitar. I wasn't really focusing on, Charlie Parker or Sonny Rollins. So it's a matter of more just a mastery of more depth in chords and things like that. But I can sit in with any rhythm and blues band in the world and hold my own. But if it's going to be a jazz thing, I'll probably sing.
Do you remember the first song you ever wrote, and what was it?
Well, the first song I ever wrote was a really terrible song I wrote for some girl in high school, and it was awful. But one of the first songs that I really, one of the first good songs that I wrote ended up on my first record, a song called "Sleeping with the Lights On." I was trying to learn a Bonnie Raitt song. And from her album Nick of Time, which had won the Grammy a few years before, and I was trying to figure out how to play that on the keyboard, and I still can't play the piano. And what I ended up with was this other song entirely that ended up on my record, and was served me well. So what I did learn is that sometimes you can take off from someone else's material and grow it into something completely different. In that case, it was just by me not being a good enough keyboard player.
So you're in New York slugging it out, trying to make it. When did your big break come, and how did it come?
Well, I started in the blues clubs, going to jam sessions. I'd take my saxophone in, and then someone would hire me out from that. And then I'd sing, when I was playing sax with them, and get a job of my own. And that started to grow. I started to write. I started to play in different clubs besides the blues clubs, the sort of showcase clubs like the Bitter End, places where people got record deals. But that really wasn't happening yet. The strange thing is, I was playing a jazz gig with a little jazz trio at a restaurant on the Upper West Side. And we were just doing whatever we wanted to. We were doing some of my songs. We were doing an Al Green tune. We were doing a Steely Dan tune. We were doing old standards, just all over the place, which is kind of the kind of records I make now. The kind of records I've made for the last 20 years are just like that, taking songs from different genres and putting them into the jazz format. And that's where I was discovered.
So I guess you signed with what was it, Arista?
Arista Records, yeah.
And then there was, I guess, Clive Davis comes into the picture at some point, no?
Yeah, well, Clive was the president and founder of Arista Records, and so he was there. He was the president of the company when my first record came out, and he really pushed my music, and that was great. I basically co-wrote almost every song on the record, and I helped to pick the producers. I was very involved in the creative process, which I liked. That's who I am. I want to be in control of the type of music that I made. That record came out. It was a success. I got a song on the Bodyguard soundtrack, or a recording on the Bodyguard soundtrack. It's actually a song written by Nick Lowe, one of my heroes. But that was huge. That sold 45 million copies. And then it came time to make my second record, and Clive wanted me to sing other people's songs. He wasn't interested in my songs. He wanted me to sing other people's songs and work with producers that, I thought they were fine, but I wasn't really, I had my ideas, he had his. So we had a bit of a butting of the heads, we went toe to toe for a few years. And by the time my second record came out, after that wrangling and pushing and pulling, by the time it came out, and it was 1995, so 3.5 years later, the music business, the radio business in particular, had moved on. By the time by 95, pop stations were alternative stations. They were playing Alanis Morissette and Soundgarden and Nirvana and Alice in Chains, which was cool. I mean, I loved those stations. I listened to that music, but my music didn't fit radio anymore. And so the second record was not nearly as successful as the first. I mean, also when you put 3.5 years between your debut album and your second album, you're going to have trouble. There's, you got to use that momentum from the first record, which wasn't done. So at that point, I started to realize that maybe chasing hits and pop radio wasn't sort of what I was about. I mean, the other thing that I didn't love about the pop business was I would write and record a record for a year or 2 years or however long it took, put my heart and soul into it, my whole person into it. And then if it didn't get on the radio within the first 2 weeks of being released, if it didn't just immediately become a hit, it was considered a failure, as opposed to taking some time, letting people get to know the record, that sort of a thing. I wasn't judged on sort of the beauty of the music. I was judged on whether it got on those charts. And I didn't like that. That was painful for me. And it felt sort of antithetical to who I was as an artist. I mean, I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to make music that I loved. And I figured there were people out there who would love it. So I really pushed against the pop thing, or at least the sort of superstardom thing. And I always went where my heart went. I followed my heart, and it has, in the long run, served me very well. I now have a career where I produce my records. I pick the songs or write the songs. I pick the musicians. I'm the boss, and I like that. Maybe I'm a control freak, who knows? But it works for me, and I get to make the music that I love. I can sleep at night. I can look myself in the mirror, and I make a living mostly by selling tickets. That's how I make a living, is touring and playing music all over the world. I tour Europe and I play big theaters all over the world. And it's a beautiful way to make a living. And it's what I imagined as a kid, what being a musician was about. Not about, getting my hair just right and shaking a lot of hands and making guys in suits happy. It's about making me happy, and I make a living doing it. So I'm really lucky.
So you've gone on to have an incredible career spanning multiple continents. Did you ever think you'd kind of find the success that you found in Europe? I mean, if you're an outsider looking in on jazz, it might not be something you'd associate with Europe, but there's a massive following there.
There is. And, really my success in Europe started when I was a pop singer. My first album sold 1.5 million copies around the world, including America. It sold almost almost gold, almost 500,000 in America. And then it sold another, 400,000 in England or in the UK, and another 300 in Germany. Those are smaller countries. So they were multi-platinum albums in those countries. My visibility, my profile was much higher there than in the States. I had real success here for that first album. I was on The Tonight Show, 4 times for the first album, and Arsenio and Kathy Lee and Regis and Today Show and all that stuff. I did all those things. It was amazing. I toured around the world with my heroes. I played at Shea Stadium with Eric Clapton and Elton John. That was great. But I wasn't a household name. People knew me, but in England, people thought of me as a big star. So I kept going back there. I kept focusing on those territories that bought my records and kept coming to my shows. It paid the rent, and they dug what I do, and they still do. I have a career here in the States, but I play much more over there, and it's great. I mean, if I have the choice of going to Paris, playing in Paris and London and Copenhagen and Edinburgh, or going to Peoria. No offense to Peoria, but I want to go to Paris, baby. I want to go hang out in London with my friends and drink a nice pint of ale and I mean, it's a really cool life that I get to lead, and the flights are just a little longer. The overnight flights will kill you, but once you get there, it's really, I really like my job. I'm lucky to have it.
Now, one of the other crazy things for me is that you found yourself working on the show Sons of Anarchy. How did your work on This Life come about?
Well, my friend Bob Thiel Jr., somebody that I'd written songs with and made records with over the years, Bob called me. It's like 13 years ago now. It's amazing how time flies. He called me and he said, I just got a new job. I'm the music supervisor on this new TV show. We wrote, Dave Kushner and I. Dave Kushner was in the band Velvet Revolver, great musician and songwriter. He and Bob had written the music for the theme song to this new show. And Bob said, I need you to write. Do you have time to write lyrics for it? Can you give it a try? I said, oh yeah, sure. I was off the road for a couple of weeks. I had the time. I said, so what's the show about? He said, it's about bloodthirsty gun running bikers. And I said, no wonder you called me. But I saw the trailer for it. I got an idea of what it was about, and what the thing was. And I wrote some lyrics. I recorded I recorded a vocal on the demo that they sent it back to them. Bob said they like it. The creator of the show, Kurt Sutter, is going to tweak the lyrics, take his shot at some of them, and sort of co-write the lyrics with you. I said, great, it's his show, fine. Sent it back to me. I liked it. I sang it again, sent it back, thinking that I was just going to be a co-writer on the show. I sent it back, and he said, oh, they love it. They love this recording of you singing it. This is going to go in the show. So suddenly, not only was I a co-writer for this song, but I was the voice of Sons of Anarchy. And then it turned into this massive hit. I mean, people love that show. The fans of Sons of Anarchy are just rabid for it. It was a lot of fun. So I made a lot of new fans. I got to sing some music that was in a different vein than I normally do, blues rock as opposed to kind of jazz blues. Definitely rocked harder, and that was fun. And over the life of the series, I got to record some other songs as well. I did a kind of a pivotal song in the first series was a song called John the Revelator, which we borrowed from the great bluesman Son House, and sort of did a version that was most like his version, and that got a lot of attention as well. So I met a lot of interesting new fans, and got to go hang out with some of the TV stars now and then, and did a tour with the group that played the music, including Katie Seagal, who was the lead actress in it. So she's a great singer. So she was. I went out on tour with Katie Seagal, with Peg Bundy.
So now you've got this new album coming out, This Life. What was the inspiration for making this record?
Well, it's been 30 years since my first album. This is the 30th anniversary of my entrance into the record business. I'd played music for over a decade before that record came out, but that was my first album 30 years ago. And I, over the years, have continued to play some of the songs that especially the hit singles from that first album and other songs from my albums throughout my career. But we play them differently. Back then, I played with a pop band with electric guitar, loud electric guitars, and very, very electric sounding and rockin'. These days, I tour with a jazz quintet or as a jazz quintet, and so we play jazz versions of those songs. The same way that I'll take an Elvis Costello song, pull it apart, and put it back together as a jazz arrangement. I've done that with I Wonder Why, with You're All That Matters to Me, with Never Saw a Miracle, and songs along the way. What's so funny about Peace, Love, and Understanding from the Bodyguard soundtrack, the Sons of Anarchy song. We do those entirely differently than they were originally recorded. I wanted to represent that on an album, and what better time to do that, to take a look back than for my 30th anniversary. It was actually, I had the idea for my 25th anniversary, but I was too busy making new records to worry about looking back yet at 25 years, but 30 years, okay, let's do it. And so it's about this life, that's why I called it This Life. It's named after the song from the Sons of Anarchy theme, but it's about this life that I've lived, on the road. I've traveled millions of miles. I've played thousands and thousands of concerts and made 14 records. So it was time for a little look back.
So let's talk a little bit more about your new album. When does the record drop, and where can our audience go to listen or purchase?
Well, February 25th is the release date, and you can go anywhere. It's at all the platforms. You can stream it on all the, I won't name any of the streaming. Wherever you stream music, you can hear This Life. Right now, there are a couple of singles out that you can listen to, so the preview singles, but after February 25th, you can buy it on, on Apple and all the rest of them. And you can go to your local record store. And that's what I recommend. Go to your local record store and buy it on vinyl, because it's going to sound good on vinyl. It's a double album. I'm really excited. It's my first. Oh, wow. It's my first double album. You can open it up and look at.
Hey, I missed those. I missed those when the double albums on vinyl.
The fanboy in me is really excited about the double album. Yeah.
So, and where can our audience go to follow you on social media?
Oh, I'm everywhere. I'm
on the screen. We'll put it on the screen there.
Yeah, I'm the Curtis Stigers on Instagram, because somebody took Curtis Stigers. There are so many Curtis Stigerses on there, but I'm the one with a little check mark, and it's the Curtis Stigers. I'm on Facebook as Curtis Stigers. I'm on Twitter. I'm very angry and political on Twitter. Don't go there unless you want to read me swearing a lot. But the other thing that I want to tell you about really quickly is that every Wednesday I do a live stream show. It started during the pandemic because I couldn't get out there and play, and I wanted to keep in touch with my fans. So I do Songs from My Kitchen. It's every Wednesday. If you go to curtisstigers.com, you can click on Songs from My Kitchen, the live stream, and you can watch all the old ones, or you can just tune in some Wednesday. I do it at 1 p.m. in Mountain Time, which is, sort of East Coast is 3 p.m. But you can watch them later. They're accessible at any time of the day or night.
Curtis, I really appreciate you being on the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, Curtis Stigers.
Thank you. It was really nice talking to you.
That's our show for tonight. A special thanks to Curtis Stigers for joining us, and thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, everyone.